Today we're looking at a 36 square meters or 390 square feet mid-century apartment in Warsaw, Poland. It's a beautifully designed place that uses natural colors and materials so well, but they've also made one big mistake that I don't want you to make in your own home, and I'm going to share that with you in just a minute. Let's look at this apartment together. So the kitchen here is set up in an L shape, kind of out of necessity, but it works really well for this small space. And it's split between the warm wood cabinets and these cream built-ins that run from floor to ceiling. And what's really cool here is how much storage they've managed to squeeze into this kitchen, even though the space is so small. Because in an apartment that's just 36 square meters, every inch of space truly counts. But another way that they've leaned into making the space feel bigger is with the backsplash, because they use these glossy cream tiles and also run these all the way up to the ceiling. And because they're light in color, the light from the windows bounces off them in this really nice, soft way that makes the kitchen feel bigger than it actually is. And because there's this contrast between the warm wooden cabinets and the dark granite countertops, next to the cream on the backsplash and the built-ins, the space looks really striking without using any color at all. And then we've got this dark carved dining table in the middle of the room. And this is very clearly an Art Deco piece because Art Deco was a period that celebrated ornament, and this table has it in spades. But what I find so interesting is that surrounding the table are these 1920s steel and leather chairs, and these are Bauhaus, which is all about industrial functional design. What we've got here is the lightness and functionality of Bauhaus chairs surrounding the ornamental Art Deco table. So metal that feels engineered next to wood that feels crafted. And the tension between those two eras is what makes the space feel so well put together. But another thing they've done here is clearly delineated where the kitchen ends and the living room begins. Because in the kitchen area, they've used pale terrazzo tile on the floors, but for the living room, they switched to this herringbone parquet. And this shift in materials may seem subtle, but it gives us a clear indication of where one zone ends and another zone begins without needing any walls or physical dividers. And then there are a couple more small touches that make this space feel like home. The hammered brass vase on the table with this colorful arrangement of flowers, the ceramics next to the vase and on the shelf above the sink, and even the way the wood cabinets have this visible grain that catches the light differently depending on where you're standing. For such a tiny kitchen, it really achieves a lot, and I'm sure that it's a nice place to spend some time. Now, of course, because the dining table is set so close to the kitchen counters, you can't really put 4 chairs at the dining table here because it would just get too crowded with someone trying to pass behind and operate in the kitchen. But if there's just 1 or 2 people using this kitchen regularly, then this isn't a problem at all. Okay, let's take a look at the living room now. And what you immediately see here is the sofa on the left, this fluted glass partition on the right, and the window on the far wall. Now, on the other side of this partition is the bedroom, which I'll get to in a minute, but using this kind of partition is a really smart way to let light move through the apartment while still lending some privacy to the bedroom area. And because it's painted in the same creamy beige as the walls, it feels like it's built in as if it's always been there. The windows actually run the full length of the wall, and they're draped with these sheer white curtains which are layered under these deeper rust-colored ones. And I'm sure that the light that comes in through these windows must be so warm and nice, especially in the afternoon when it hits the herringbone parquet and this thick Moroccan rug that's sitting in the center of the room. Now, many people would say that the rug could have been larger in here, but I actually like the way that they've left the floors mostly exposed, because when you have such beautiful floors like they do in here, you really don't want to cover them up too much with rugs unless you absolutely need to. But at the same time, what they've done here creates a little bit of separation and makes the space feel larger because they fit an entire rug in the center of the room while still having this sideboard on the right side and the sofa on the left. And by opting for a thicker, more plush rug, it softens the entire room and actually kind of makes you want to sit on the floor, which might be necessary if they have a lot of guests over and don't have enough seating, since in this room they only have the sofa and the 2 chairs from the dining room if they choose to pull those over. Now, I've got to say, I love this bird of paradise plant sitting next to the sofa. It just contrasts so beautifully with the rust curtains and the beige on the sofa and the walls, but it also gives the space a sense of life. And between this bird of paradise, the plant in the window, and these flowers on the dining table, it really feels like there's a lot of energy in this room. So take note of this. If you're in a small space and you don't know how to liven it up, introducing plants is an amazing way to do that. And it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Even just a couple of small leafy plants that you sit on your coffee table or next to the window like you see here, that can be such a good way to not only give your space some natural energy, but also some color. I mean, just look at how nicely the green pops in this room next to all the neutrals around it. But I also want to talk a bit more about this teak sideboard, because it's such a beautiful natural color that isn't quite the same as the kitchen cabinets, but it still matches really nicely with them. And it gives the homeowners a bit more storage, not for anything large, but just for the small everyday items like books or anything else that they want to store and have easy access to. And then the coffee table here, in my view, is just the right size. For a living room, you'd normally want something larger because you'd have more people using it, but given that they've only got the one sofa here and not a lot of empty floor space, choosing this smaller coffee table was the right move. But further than that, choosing something purely functional was the right move, because I see so many people choosing a coffee table more for its aesthetics than for its functional use. But 99% of the time, that just fails, because then they end up with a coffee table that has multiple layers, or it isn't the right material where you can place a hot or cold drink on it, or just something else ridiculous like that. But especially when you're in a small space like this one, you need to be hyper focused about choosing furniture for its functional purpose first and for its aesthetics second. But again, what's so interesting about this room is the same thing that caught my attention in the kitchen and dining room, and that's the mix of eras, because we've got this mid-century sideboard, more of a modern minimalist sofa, the glass partition that comes from pre-war design, and then all those different eras are punctuated by all the warm, natural materials that make up the space. And even the colors match really nicely too. The rust curtains tie into the rust tones in the rug and sideboard, and the black coffee table matches the black lamp on the sideboard and the lighting fixture overhead. And so overall, I just really love how they were able to create so much life in such a small living room. Now let's move into the bedroom, which is just on the other side of that glass partition. Now, even though the partition isn't creating full privacy by any means, and it doesn't run the entire length of the wall, it still provides a good amount of separation between the bedroom and the living room. And just as the difference between the terrazzo floors in the kitchen and the parquet in the living room create this mental separation between the two spaces, this partition does the exact same. And when you're sitting on the couch, you really can't see the bedroom at all, which was the exact intention here. Now, the entire back wall of the bedroom is painted this soft olive green, which is the only color we've seen on the walls anywhere in this apartment so far. And slowly, here in the bedroom, they're starting to introduce just a little bit more color into the space. They've gone with the same rust curtains that match those in the living room, but the bedding has this dusty rose quilt and coral pillows that match really nicely with the cream bedding. And with the same parquet floors in here, the whole bedroom feels really warm and well put together. But this might actually be a good time to talk about those floors, because herringbone parquet is not a new trend by any means, and it's actually got a lot of architectural history. Remember, this apartment is in Warsaw, Poland, and pre-war tenement apartments in Poland use wood parquet all the time because it aged really nicely, it handled the drafts of wind that would blow in through old, poorly fitting windows, and it also signaled a sense of craftsmanship. And so by using it again here in this apartment, the designers aren't staging some modern minimalist look. No, they're speaking the material language of the building's origins. Now, they also decided to use these round, chunky bedside tables that look pretty good next to the bed, and they paired them with these matching pendant lights hanging from the ceiling, plus a couple framed pieces of art that sit on this very thin ledge running along the edge of the room. So even in here, where the designers are starting to introduce a little bit more color for the first time, you can still tell how everything just plays off each other in such a gentle way. And because there's texture everywhere, from the linen bedding to the wood floors, to the brass and paper on the pendant lights, to the ceramics on the side table, there's a ton of visual interest in this room, even though it's also not large. Now, the one thing that seems to be missing in the bedroom here is storage, because I don't see where they're storing all their clothes. It's possible that they've got a really low dresser at the foot of the bed on the other side of the partition here, though I don't think they have enough space for that. And the only other option I see would be that they may have a walk-in closet through this doorway before entering the bathroom. But honestly, I'm not sure. And in a space this small, storage is always a big concern. And so they do have more storage here above the fridge and oven in the kitchen, but for their clothes for daily wear, I'm really not sure where they're storing them in here. But now let's move into the bathroom, where things definitely take a bit of a different turn. And there are a couple things that jump out at you as soon as you enter the bathroom. one being the ceiling and the other being the floor. The ceiling is painted this deep burgundy red, almost like a rich red wine, and right below it is this horizontal stripe in a similar coral pink to what we saw on the pillows on the bed. And then the rest of the walls below that are the same cream that we saw through the rest of the apartment, with the bottom half of the walls in these square cream tiles. Now, above that, this is not a mirror, which is what I originally thought, but this is actually a framed shelf space on the side of the tub. So it's set up that way so that if you're standing in there taking a shower and you want to put your bathroom items on the shelf, then that's the place to do it. But essentially, we've got this 3-layer color blocking that's way more bold than what we've seen in the rest of the apartment. And then on the floor, they went even more bold with this checkerboard pattern, but not even just a standard checkerboard, because they've got these wavy diamond patterns that kind of look like Windows 98 logos, and they create this kind of basket weave effect. And so it's kind of both graphic and vintage at the same time, and it gives this bathroom a lot of personality. Unfortunately, I don't like the personality. It's definitely funky and it catches your eye, but for me, I would have loved to see them carry out this functional, natural aesthetic that they nailed so well throughout the rest of the home. And I want to point out a few of the issues in here so you know exactly what I'm talking about. First, there's no natural light that reaches the bathroom, and as far as I can tell, the pendant light hanging from the ceiling, which I do love, is the only light in here. But if that's the only light lighting this space, then it's not going to be nearly enough. Because if you've got to enter this room multiple times a day, and keep in mind, it is the only bathroom in the apartment, all these bold colors and patterns are going to get old really quick. And because there's no natural light hitting them at different angles as the sun moves throughout the day, they're going to look tired and flat instead of bold and punchy in the way that they're intended to. But the second issue here is that these tiles only go halfway up the wall, and then above that, it's just a painted plaster wall. And that's going to look awful after 6 or 12 months because water is going to be all over it. And so you'll have streak stains on the wall, the shelf, and just about everything in this room, because there's not even a shower curtain keeping the shower area enclosed. And so I recognize that this might just be me not having lived in Europe long enough, but I never liked the notion of having to hold the shower head while I'm taking a shower. I mean, it just never makes sense to me. I don't know why you wouldn't mount the shower head on the wall so you can take a proper shower without, number one, using 50% of your hands to hold the shower head above you, and number two, when you don't have any kind of shower curtain, just getting water all over the bathroom. It just simply doesn't make sense to me. So this may be a case of the coddling of the North American mind, but someone please make this make sense to me and how this could possibly be a good idea. But even if you love not having a shower curtain and just having a nice wet bathroom, Asian style, there are still other problems in here, because the toilet seems to be jammed right up against this vanity with the sink, and the sink itself is incredibly small. So there's absolutely no space for 2 people to use the sink at the same time, and I'm honestly questioning whether one person can effectively use it without getting water all over the vanity and the surrounding area. And when you've got a wood vanity like they have here, splashing water everywhere is not a good idea, because the wood's gonna warp and weaken over time. Now, in one of the apartments I lived in recently, I had a bathroom that was even smaller than this one. That bathroom was only about 3 square meters or 30 square feet, but it still managed to have a toilet, a spacious shower, and a significantly larger sink with more counter space all in there at the same time. And it never felt cramped when I was using it. It did feel small when there were 2 people in there brushing their teeth at the same time, but for one person, it was totally enough space. Plus, the ceilings in that bathroom were lower than they are in here, which should have made it feel even smaller, but it never did. So, as much of a fan as I am of what they've done in the rest of the apartment, I think they kind of dropped the ball here on the bathroom, and they could have done things a lot better. And if it were me designing this bathroom, I would have got rid of the bathtub. Unless it was an absolute must for the homeowners, the bathroom would feel so much better with a freestanding shower. And then you'd have so much more space to properly position the toilet and give yourself a nice sized vanity where you've got some room to maneuver. But by including a full-size bathtub in here, and by not placing either the toilet or the vanity on the opposite side of the room, they really just killed any sense of spaciousness and made the bathroom, which still has a decent amount of empty floor space, feel cramped. And again, because there's no natural light coming in here, it's gonna feel like a bit of a claustrophobic space when you're maneuvering so tightly in between different objects in here. So I really think that they could have done a better job with the layout in this room. But it's also worth mentioning that because the bathroom sits off of the bedroom, anyone who's visiting this apartment has to walk through the bedroom to get to the bathroom. Now, of course, this isn't really something that you have that much control over in a small space like this, because you're often falling victim to the layout of the plumbing, but it is something to keep in mind, and whoever lives here probably just needs to keep their bedroom extra tidy if they're ever having guests over. So what can we learn from this apartment? Number one, you don't need to use color to make your space feel alive. And they do this so beautifully in the kitchen, dining room, and living room, just using natural colors and materials that make the space look and feel amazing. Second, even in a very small apartment like this one, you can still create an extremely functional space. So if you're ever feeling limited by your floor plan, it's normally not the floor plan that's the limitation. It's your imagination. So get creative, look at other spaces for inspiration, and start thinking outside the box. And number three, always pay close attention to layout. They nailed it everywhere in here except in the bathroom, but even the bathroom only needs a few small changes to make it just as good as the rest of the home. So I'm breaking down a bunch of homes like this one, so make sure you subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And I've left links in the description to a few other videos on beautiful apartments like this one, so if you're buying or remodeling your own apartment, then you can learn from the successes and failures of all these homes. And if you want to see another home that has a lot of similarities to this one, check out this video up here about a beautiful modernist home in rural California. If you like the vibe of this place, I'm certain you'll like that one too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.